Dear friends, when Jesus called his disciples, they were part of a thriving fishing industry. According to the Gospels, they were predominantly from an humble fishing village called Capharnaum. But nearby was also a busy fishing town, Magdala. Archaeologists tell us it had a sizable fishing port, which was protected by a big tower. And that tower was probably a source of its Hebrew name. Hebrew word for tower is migdal. So Magdala is thus a town of harbor tower, or maybe a lighthouse. As a fishing town, it was also a place for processing fish. Magdala had a Greek name, Tariche, town of salted fish. And then further south, along the shore, Herod Antipas was just at that time building Tiberias, a new administrative center to control and also tax all that thriving fishing business. Tiberias was just far enough from Magdala so that they can administer, control, and tax, but without smelling all those fisheries. Yes, if you ever drove by a real active fishery, say in Norway or Iceland, you know what I'm talking about. In the 1st century Galilee, it must have been even smellier. Large fish were sliced and processed into salsamentum, salted pickled fish or fillets. Fish heads and innards, together with the small fry fish, were fermented in big open basins into fish sauce called garum or liquamen, and remnants and solids from fish sauce were crushed into a paste called halek or alek or myriad. It must have been dreadful sting, but resulting product, just like today's East Asian fish sauce or anchovy paste, were popular all around the Roman Empire and beyond. In the 1st century Galilee, Jesus' disciples were at the source of all this thriving fishing business. And that is something you might not know about fishing in the New Testament time. And a little further, Galilean fishing economy was booming, but it did not mean that all its workers were thriving. They actually were easily exploited. So count with me, what kind of fees did fishermen need to pay? First, buying fishing rights or licenses from their highest lord, Herod Antipas, or his office. Here it is not completely certain, but it's hard to tell. It all depends whether the body of water was considered to be a lake, limne, or a sea, thalassa. Interestingly, in the New Testament, both words are used, Sea of Galilee or Lake of Gennesaret. So we have difficulties to know whether fishing rights were really levied upon fishermen. But then they had to come to a harbor, and they had to pay mooring fees. And even if they used their own home like Capharnaum, they still needed to bring their catch to Magdala and use that harbor and pay for the use of that harbor. Thirdly, there were custom dues to bring fish on land. In the Gospels, we hear that even such a small village as Capharnaum had such custom house. It was called telonion, often translated as tax booth. That's where Matthew was called. And lastly, there were market fees by market administrator. They were called agoranomos, or in Latin, aediles. They were in charge of the local weights and were supervising or even fixing prices. So those were at least 4 different monetary dues, fees and taxes put directly on fishermen. And this heavy taxation and even exploitation is another thing you might not know about Jesus' disciples, those ancient Galilean fishermen. Join us this Sunday. We will hear how Jesus called and liberated fishermen from those stifling circumstances and offered them a new hope, and how he calls us to the same or similar new vision and new hope.